Let us take stock with what is going on in our main characters. Stepan was determined to make his last stand and serve civic virtue, and he does so at the literary celebration, but he is humiliated. Pyotr was using the literary celebration and the following ball as a cover for his revolutionary activity. It succeeds, and the town burns down and inconvenient people are eliminated. The governor and his wife, whose policy was to indulge the revolutionaries, are humiliated, and the governor himself becomes sick, presumably with brain fever. This is a sign that he knows his path is a dead end. What about Stravogin? As Peter is firing up the revolution, and as Stepan prepares for his last stand, Stravogin had been to the bishops and had confessed all his sins. But he could neither accept forgiveness nor forgive himself. He has finally borne his troubled soul to someone besides Darya. How will this change him? Stravogin re-enters the story on the last pages of the last chapter of part 2. And it follows right after his visit to the bishop. Nearly all the main characters have gathered at the governor's house, where there is a debate about whether or not the literary celebration should continue, given the signs of the unrest. Stravogin walks in at the end of the discussion. LIsa is there, and so is her fiancé, Mavriky. Stravogin is silent for a while. Here is what our narrator says. Stravogin's face was paler than usual, and his gaze uncommonly distracted. He never once glanced at LIsa, not because he did not want to, but, I maintain, because he did not notice her at all. The blood had come out of his face, and he was distracted. He was still troubled by what to do about all his wrongs. He knows that he must confess. He cannot forgive himself, so he is mostly just silent and distracted. LIsa breaks the silence when she asks him about some man who calls himself Stravogin's wife's brother, who keeps writing letters to her, offering to reveal secrets to her concerning Stravogin. LIsa is accusing Stravogin, and our narrator says that she acted like someone who is closing her eyes and throwing herself off a roof. Stravogin answers with a confession. He was calm. He was not embarrassed or angry. He stiffens his back and says that he is indeed the man's relation and has been married to his sister for well nigh 5 years. Varvara is horrified. Stravogin walks out and drives home without seeing his mother. LIsa jumps up and leaves. Mavriky, ever the puppy dog, follows her. So Stravogin confesses. He confesses in front of everyone. Everyone is horrified at the match. No one can explain what he has done, except to recognize that it is an affront to legitimate marriage. The crazy woman cannot consent, reproduce, nor was she a fit spouse. Fast forward now to the literary celebration, and we get close to the end. LIsa shows up to the celebration, and she has never looked better. There was happiness, joy, energy, and strength in her face. She was lovely and magnificently attired. Why? The reason LIsa had looked so good was that her overseer had arranged a getaway between LIsa and Stravogin. LIsa had gone right from her carriage arriving at the celebration to Stravogin's carriage, and then slipped away in broad daylight with him to his estate. It becomes clear that Pyotr has arranged the whole thing, and Mavriky lets her go. Then the ball happens, and the town is consumed with fire, and Marya Timofeevna is murdered. This all sets the stage for the denouement in Part 3, Chapter 3, called A Finished Romance. The chapter opens in the morning with LIsa standing on a veranda, with her dress not tightly fastened, and in fact, quite rumpled. She had spent the night with Stravogin, and I do not think they were playing pinochle. They observe the fire. What follows is a long conversation, It is clear that Stravogin loves Lisa, and he is willing to leave town with her and to try to start a new life elsewhere, to resurrect elsewhere, as he says. Perhaps through her he can forgive himself. She looks at him, however, with hatred. This hatred is a mixture of spite at Darya and a belief that living with Stravogin would bring her to a place where, quote, there lives a huge evil spider as big as a man, and we would spend our whole life there looking at him and being afraid. I am not positive that that means it would be a good thing. Their characters, each restless and unable to achieve peace, suggest that neither is ready to love another. Lisa says as much when she does not want to be Stravogin's tender-hearted nurse. There is a wedge between them, but it needs to be driven further. The man to drive that wedge further is Peter, who arrives in their love nest at the end of section 1. He has come so that Stravogin will take his proper role at the head of the revolution and help him to rule. Peter says, this democratic scum with its fives sometimes is a poor support. What we need is one splendid, monumental, despotic will, supported by something external and not accidental. The people are calling for him. Plus, Stravogin is in a compromising position because the people know that he wanted his wife to burn. A rumor that he was involved in the murder might, Peter suggests, blow to the four winds. Stravogin even asks, are you threatening me, foolish head? Next, Peter tries bribery and appeals to Stravogin and his desire to make Lisa happy. Her fiancé, Mavriky, is outside waiting for her. But what needs she have of him when Stravogin is now a widower and can marry her tomorrow? There is a stick, the threat of exposing him, and a carrot, a life with Lisa. But Peter does not know that the carrot will not work. Lisa has resisted Stravogin's charms. When Lisa finds out that Stravogin knew that his wife would be killed and did not stop the killers, she strikes him. Her hatred of him is confirmed by this episode. She runs away to Mavriky, who, like the puppy dog he is standing outside in the rain waiting for Lisa. There is a showdown between Peter and Stravogin. Peter once again is disappointed that Stravogin will not become the Tsarevich. He grabs Stravogin. Are you all there, or what? So this is what we're doing now? You will denounce everybody and take yourself to a monastery or to the devil? But I'll bump you off just the same. Peter pulls out a gun, and it seems that Stravogin would be happy to be shot. But Peter is ever hopeful that Stravogin will come on board, and he holsters his weapon, metaphorically. Stravogin's guilt arises again. Lisa leaves. She seems to reconcile with her fiancé, who would accept her back under almost any circumstances. I'm no good for anything, but don't drive me away from you, Mavriky pleads. Lisa wants to go to the site of the crime to confirm Stravogin's guilt, and there she is killed by a mob. They don't just kill, they also come and look, the mob yells. We don't see Stravogin again, but, just to anticipate, the novel will end with his letter to Darya, confessing his vices, and then his suicide. If he could temporarily forgive himself for the sake of life with Lisa, he could not forgive himself ultimately. So these lovers both end up dead. Lisa at the hands of a mob, Stravogin by his own hand, or more precisely, by a rope. It is no small thing figuring out why this had to be, in Dostoevsky's view. Let me offer a bit of speculation. Lisa is neither Christian nor liberal. Same with Stravogin. This has something to do with their restlessness. Neither has a home. Neither knows what to do with their errors nor with their consciences. Liberals and revolutionaries turn these psychological traits into political instruments. One's conscience will be relieved, they think, if the next reform is accomplished. Christians recognize a deeper problem embedded in the human soul and resolvable only from the outside by God's grace. These particular characters, however, seemed most unable to experience happiness. Stravogin rejects the moral order of his time, but he will not destroy it. He violates it, but he will not participate in the revolutionary movement. He is almost tempted to turn to faith, and is in fact more than halfway there. But he rejects that too. His last hope is, in a sense, his love for LIsa, but she rejects him. And in the end, there is nothing for him to do but hang himself. Next, another death, but a happier one. We discuss Shatov's conversion and his murder.